10 phases of a negotiation. Now, in some negotiations, you may only have 7 phases or 8 phases, and in some negotiations, perhaps you only have 3 or 4 phases. But in a successful negotiation, and when I say successful, I mean that both parties are happy, both parties actually feel they've gained something, and both parties actually feel they've gained something without the counterpart has been paying for it. In those negotiations, we have 10 phases. Now, the first one we have, phase 1, is obviously being able to identify what is a negotiation. Now, obviously, if you and I had a negotiation on Thursday at 10 o'clock, both of us would know we have a negotiation, so that would be pretty easy. We'll be able to prepare, we'll be able to have the agenda ready, we'll be able to do whatever is needed to conduct a proper negotiation. But the majority of the negotiation, the actual negotiation we have is actually surprising. It could be a phone call and suddenly you're in the middle of a potential negotiation. It could be you're walking the hallway in the office and suddenly somebody comes up to you and you have a negotiation. So a lot of these negotiations is not something that we can actually prepare. Some of you might remember the short story I wrote in chapter 1, where one of you might be sitting at home with your wonderful spouse, and then suddenly your spouse looked at you and said, "Listen, my dear, are you going to be in the office all day?" And you say, "Yes, I am. I'm preparing this huge project that we are presenting to a client next week, so I'm not going anywhere throughout the whole day." And then your spouse might say, "Well, that's wonderful because my car is at the garage. There was a technical failure, so I have to use your car today. So you're going by train and bus to the office, and I'll see you tonight, my dear." You know, what happened right there was actually a negotiation you didn't see coming. You didn't identify you're in the middle of that negotiation, and you actually never picked up that you lost that negotiation. So as I was talking about way earlier about my own daughter, we have so many negotiations throughout a day in our private life and our professional life that we don't actually identify as a negotiation. I'm telling you something that is perhaps a little bit surprising, and that is that up to 80% of what you may consider just communication between two individuals could actually be categorized as a negotiation. That means when person A wants to convince person B about something, this is a type of negotiation. So when we're done with this class, one of my aims is that you are capable of identifying what is a negotiation. And suddenly, obviously, when you realize this is actually a negotiation, then you have to pick up the right toolbox and pick up the right tools in the toolbox to deal with that situation. Phase number 2 we have on this list is preparation. And we have a complete separate class just on the topic of preparation. And why? Because it is crucial. It is probably one of the most important areas that we can cover throughout the whole training. As I've been saying earlier, I have the privilege of working with hundreds and thousands of people every year. All of them are skilled, bright. It's an honor, it's a pleasure working with all of these people. But the majority of those, one area where they could improve on is preparation. And it's not because they don't want to, it's not because they don't have the time, it's really because they don't know what to prepare. Often when I'm stepping in as an advisor, I'm asking my client, are we ready for this negotiation tomorrow? And they'll show me all the spreadsheet and the PowerPoint and the calculation and the world info and whatever they have. And I ask them 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions and they look absolutely blank. And we go back into the conference room and start preparing again. Because they have prepared themselves, but they haven't prepared for the right thing. So we're going to talk about preparation, how important that is. Then we have phase number 3, and that is opening of the negotiation. Now, those of you that might be from the northern part of the US, the northern part of Europe, may recognize what I'm saying right now. And since I'm North European myself and even Scandinavian, that probably makes sense. In Northern Europe and the northern part of the US, there's a tendency that we would step into a negotiation and say, "So nice to meet you. It's finally warming up out there. I hope it's going to be a nice summer." Anyway, the first item on the agenda is, and boom, there we go. We don't waste a lot of time on creating a relationship or improving trust or talk about our private case or family or something like that. We just engage right into negotiation. The problem is that in the southern part of the US, South America, southern part of Europe, most of Asia, huge part of Africa, that approach would actually create a counterpart who would be sitting suffering from a heart attack. Because the counterpart would be sitting there thinking, what the heck happened right there? We just met each other for 3 minutes ago. We have not talked about our family. You haven't seen any pictures of my kids. We haven't been to the karaoke bar. We haven't been out dining. We haven't created any kind of relationship. And now this person actually believes that we can go into a negotiation and conduct business. He must be out of his mind. So what we really need to understand is that opening up negotiation is not a waste of time. It's not about just chit-chatting, but it's actually already exchanging information, creating trust, and creating a foundation to build upon and actually utilize later. Another thing that is very useful in the opening part of the negotiation is that very often we can gain some information that we otherwise wouldn't get at all. So please remember, opening of negotiation is pretty crucial. Phase number 4 is the argumentation phase. And basically, it's a waste of time. And let me just share with you for a second why I consider this a waste of time. Now, sales rep, and I don't want to offend anybody, but sales rep have a tendency to argue a lot. And let's just play, for the sake of this case here, for a second that I'm a sales rep, and I'm out selling a pen. And I might come to you as the potential customer and say, listen, this is a great pen. It's a high quality pen and it's actually wonderful. It is so good from a quality perspective that I'm willing to give you 2-year warranty on the pen. And that's not even the best part. I'm willing to give you a 3-year warranty on the ink part of this pen. So if this pen runs out of ink within 3 years, just call me and we will ship off a new ink cartridge for you at no additional cost. And the price of this pen, and that is the best part, is only $200. How many do you want? I'm pretty sure if you're the very professional procurement officer, you probably wouldn't just go ahead and say, oh, could you send me 1,000? I don't think you're going to do that. You're going to argue against what I just argued. So you might be saying something like this: hang on for a second, Mr. Jensen. Do you know what? You actually have competitors on the market who can offer me the exact same pen, but they're offering me the exact same pen with a 3-year warranty on the pen and a 5-year warranty on the ink level, and their price is actually $50 lower than your price. So you actually got a problem. What I just shared with you right now is actually argumentation phase. That is basically a waste of time. Think about it this way. It's 1 step forward and 3 steps backwards. We're basically wasting each other's time. When my daughter was about 7, I one day overheard her standing in the schoolyard talking to a boy. And what I heard her say was, my dad is stronger than your dad. That is basically phase number 4. It's argumentation. Now, during our weeks together, I'm going to share with you how to replace argumentation with something else and what is it we need to replace it with. Phase number 5 is actually surveying the possibilities of the negotiation. And that means, how can we actually utilize the full potential? How can we create the full map? How can we develop all the variables that need to be negotiated? And a variable could be price, delivery time, warranty, right of return, whatever we need to negotiate on. Phase number 6 is really where the actual negotiation begins, and I call that the office made and negotiation begins. So that's where the actually negotiation and exchange of information begins between the two, or how many parties we have around the table. Then we have the conclusion, and that is very crucial, phase number 7 as well, because that means how we're wrapping up this agreement and we're making sure that we are in agreement what has been concluded. And phase number 8 is crucial as well, because this is what we call confirmation and drafting of the agreement. Now, when I'm out speaking around the world, I'm very often saying that a written agreement is not worth the paper it's written on. Now, that can provoke a lot of attorneys and lawyers, I can tell you. And the reason I'm saying that is way too often throughout my career, I have seen one part who have engaging into a business relationship with a counterpart. And they have actually won almost too much. So let's assume that the strong party goes home to his office and say, look at this deal we did. My God, we basically won everything. We have created so much value that the counterpart couldn't really get anything. Now, let's just visit the counterpart for a second and let's listen to their conversation in their office, because they might be going home with their contract and suddenly realize that, hey, shoot, this was a really bad deal. We're actually losing $2 million over the next 1 year. how do you think the mentality would be? Do you think most corporations would just say, oh, well, we signed the deal, so let's go ahead and we're just going to lose that amount of money? Or do you think they might be starting to look for a potential escape clause to get out of this contract? I believe it's the latter one. Most negotiators will actually try to find a way out of this negotiation, so they are not willing and happy to fulfill the content of this negotiation. So what I'm saying is that not that we shouldn't do agreements. I do believe we should do contracts. I'm getting back to the philosophy about contracts a little bit later. But we should mainly do contracts because the memory of human beings are not that good, so we have a tendency to forget what we have promised each other. But please remember, signing a contract is not the end of a negotiation. That is only part of it. The actual negotiation certainly continues after the actual contract is done as well. But we're getting back to that a little bit later. Phase number 9, crucial because it's implementation of what the parties have promised each other. So when you, ladies and gentlemen, are going to negotiate in week 4 and 6, obviously you have the phase 9 that is really all about that you fulfill what you have promised each other. So in my world, a negotiation only starts to become successful, not when the contract is signed, but when the two parties start to fulfill what they've promised each other. And then when we talk SMARTnership and the potential of utilizing necroeconomics, then we have to look at phase number 10. Because that is all about whether the parties actually would like to do a negotiation with their counterpart at a later stage. And I feel very often that if the two parties involved in a negotiation says, never again, I don't want to do any kind of relationship with her again, then we've messed up. But if both parties actually agree, yes, it was a wonderful process, it might have been tough, but I will actually enjoy getting into another relationship with that counterpart, then we have been utilizing the negotiation the right way, and we might be more successful than we would be in the other case where the parties don't want to create or renew a relationship. Talking about strategies, we have basically 3 headlines we have to look at.